Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is James and this is the fourth and final installment of the Extreme Miter Station. With the upper cabinets hanging on the French cleats, I'm now just going to plumb them up with the base cabinets. I thought it might be a nice accent to use my remaining small pieces of walnut plywood to use as spacers between these upper cabinets. The uppers just slide around nicely since they're not screwed down, so I'll just shift it over until this fits, clamp it in, and then screw it in place. The spacers in the attachment method are really just the exact same that are used in the kitchen cabinet industry. And I will use 1¼ inch cabinet screws. These things are made by GRK just for this purpose, and they do not need to have the holes pre-drilled for them. Here's a little preview with all of the spacers in place. And if you measure carefully, you make sure your uppers line up perfectly with your lowers. So here I have a piece of walnut and a piece of cherry. I wanted a couple of contrasting woods, and I'm trying to make a unique door pull to match what I did down below. I guess not so much of a match, but something that kind of holds the woodworking theme. My wife gave me the idea of using C-clamps as cabinet door handles, and I just basically needed something for them to clamp onto. Here I'm not really using this jig for anything in particular, just more or less a straight edge to give me a location that's going to be the same on all the doors to tell me where I'm going to glue this block to. Okay, I let that dry up overnight. I've got to joint one edge, and then I'm going to use a table saw to rip it square. Then I'm over to the compound miter saw to cut them into square blocks. A tip when cutting small pieces: once your saw has plunged through the wood, leave your saw there to come to a complete stop before you lift it out. This can really minimize the danger of that saw throwing these little pieces of wood around. Here's my daughter helping me sand these down on our custom sanding block. These things are actually pretty cool. I think we're probably going to make a whole bunch of them just to play with later. That's basically it. A couple of screws in the back. We're going to secure this clamp down super tight. I might glue it, I might not. I'm not sure. It depends on whether or not it comes loose in the future. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the cubbyhole shelf area that goes between the torsion box and the upper cabinets. This is an area where you can just fully customize a piece like this. Everybody has different shelving requirements, and it's very simple to make the cubbies as big or as small as you want. Not sure if you've noticed, but I have a highly advanced cardboard dust catcher attached to my saw there. Cutting the sides of the shelves, so I'm kind of checking them for fit between the top and bottom. So something I did off camera was to put edge banding on the front of all of these pieces. I showed that in an earlier episode, and I figured you guys probably didn't want to see it again. In the hopes of adding a little more contrast, I did use walnut edge banding for the front of this wood. I thought that might look nice. Okay, I know that's a completely unnecessary filler strip, but I just don't think I could live with it if the back of my miter station weren't even. You could certainly measure these spaces out, or you could put them in there just based on what you think looks nice. Here I'm test fitting the shelf that's going to go above those. And I don't know if you can see it, but that's the walnut edge banding on the front of everything there. I've got that vertical spacer board turned sideways there, kind of to give me support right behind my drill bit. So like a dummy, I forgot to put a pocket hole in this board before I put it in place. So you get to see what the portable pocket jig does. I know the side of this cabinet here is pretty ugly, but wait till it's all done. We're going to cover it up very nicely. Here I'm just showing Kreg how many pocket screws I use. Maybe they'll send me some one day. Kreg, if you're listening, I was just kidding. I want tools, not screws. Screws are cheap. And just to show Kreg that I don't really need their pocket hole jig, you can actually put your own pocket holes in. Just do it something like this. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm never doing that again. After that experience, I pulled the spacers back out and decided to go ahead and put pocket holes inside of them on my jig. Alright, to get those vertical pieces actually mounted in place, it's a little bit tight. It's easiest if we start at the top. I use a couple of squares, maybe 3 squares on the bottom, to make sure I'm square with the back wall and that the piece is plumb. These woodpecker's squares are actually 1/4 of an inch thick aluminum. They're pretty rugged and I really don't mind clamping them. Probably tough to see what I'm going to do in here, but since my drill doesn't fit, I've got a little right angle attachment and I have to use that and turn my drill sideways in order to get that pocket screw in place. Hey, next shelf going in. That was fast. Alright, maybe my impact wrench would fit here. I probably just like using that little right angle fixture. Let's see. Yep, it fits. Okay, we're at the top row now. Attaching these was pretty straightforward. I just came up through the bottom and then down through the tops of the cabinets. Finally, we get to dress up the ends of the cabinet on both sides because it's pretty ugly. One piece of 1/4 inch cherry plywood is going to work for both sides. Maple might have contrasted better. I'm using cherry because I did have it left over from a job. This is actually a pretty scuffed up board that I could not use. This is not how I would attach a skin on the exterior of a kitchen cabinet. I'm just doing this method by pre-drilling, countersinking, and putting a screw that's visible for these because in the future I might want to take this apart. If any of you were to do something like this for your miter station, you could do it one of 2 ways. You could have these skins come all the way out flush with the front of the cabinet doors, or you could have it come behind them. Either way, a piece of plywood like this, you only need it to be cherry on one side, and it can have an MDF core, and you would expect to pay anywhere from $40 to $50 for a 4x8 sheet. Also, I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but my walnut drawer fronts, that was scrap walnut as well. But if you don't have scrap walnut sitting around, which of course most people don't, you can get a sheet of that for around $110 for a full 3/4 inch sheet. But it is definitely worth going down to your local hardwood dealer, seeing if they have any that might be scratched or scuffed up or dented. A lot of times this stuff is just damaged on one side, and they'll give you the sheet for half price or less. And here I'm trimming the very last piece to fit. After cutting, this plywood is pretty sharp on the edges, so I do like to take a sander and just knock the edges off, or all the corners, all the way around. I think we've made a significant improvement to the looks of the side of our miter station. And that is basically a wrap for the construction. After this, I sanded all the surfaces down to about 220 grit in preparation for a lacquer finish. And since I'm far too lazy to go back through and pull all of this hardware off, I'm just going to have my daughters help me tape it all up, and I'm going to spray lacquer on top of everything. I'm a very big fan of lacquer finish for a lot of projects. If you do use lacquer, you absolutely have to wear a respirator though. One of the main things that I like about it is it's very forgiving. If you make a mistake or you overlap something, it's easy to sand off a problem and give it a recoat. Another really big reason that I like it is that it dries so very fast. If you use regular polyurethane, it can take forever to dry between coats. Lacquer dries literally within minutes, and it gives instantly a beautiful finish. So check it out right here. You can really see the grain come to life on that cherry immediately, and it's going to look like that forever. If you are doing a small project like a little keepsake box or something like that, even a small bookcase, you can easily buy the lacquer in the spray cans. It's more costly, of course, but it's very convenient, and the spray nozzles for them work great. The lacquer I use the most is made by a company called Deft, D-E-F-T. It's available at Home Depot, and it's a great product with great results. So after sanding the whole thing again very lightly with 320 grit, I follow up with a second coat, and that's basically it. So that was it, my extreme miter station project. You made it all the way to the end. If you saw all 4 episodes, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for doing so. I hope you stay tuned. Every few days I come out with a new project and I put it on Facebook. And if you're very interested in this, I do have plans available on my website. That is kingsfinewoodworking.com. Thanks again.